Great. Welcome, everybody. People might come in, keep coming in, and I'll let them in as they show up. But thank you all for coming. I'll just take a couple minutes to introduce us and the organization, and then we'll jump right into the program. This is the first year we've ever done anything like this. Obviously, this is kind of an experiment for us, so we're so grateful for all of you for signing up, making donations, supporting the work that we're doing here. We really appreciate it. My name is Eleanor Harris. I'm one of the co-directors here. Bert is my other co-director and husband, who's in the other room in the office building. And the other participant on the panel, I guess, is Todd Day, who we just tried to figure out, has been leading bird walks here since late 2016, something like that, which is wonderful. And we'll talk a bit more about bird walks. But I hope over the course of the evening, you'll see what experts on birds, both Bert and Todd are. And I hope that'll encourage you to come out to one of our bird walks and learn from them in person. I think most of you, looking at your names, I think most of you have been out here before, but just in case not, we have a 900-acre property here that's protected by a conservation easement, which we use to teach kids and adults about nature and conservation and environment and all sorts of interesting topics. We also have a couple exciting restoration projects, the biggest of which is a 100-acre experiment to restore what was a fescue pasture into a more or less functioning native grassland or wildflower meadow for birds and all the other animals and plants that live there. And then we're also doing scientific research on those restoration projects as well as just on the ecology of the field station. So even though it's been a crazy year, we've been able to get a lot done, and we have big plans for 2021. So thank you all for supporting us and helping get all that done. Let's see. Yeah, it seems like some of you have found the chat. If you haven't, there should be an icon down at the bottom. It's like a little bubble that says chat. So I hope you'll participate as we go along, or if you have any issues, just jump on there and I'll be keeping an eye on that. Anything else I should say, Bert, before we get going?
I don't think so.
Okay. Great. So let's see. Can you, and I hope that so far, can you see? Can you see the screen, Bert?
Yep.
Okay, great. So this is what we said in the advertisement for the program, but just a little refresher on why we're doing a program on winter bird identification right now. One of the things with birds is that many of them molt their feathers twice a year. So they have a kind of a fancy, showy breeding plumage in the summer. And at this point in the year, they're switching or have already switched into kind of a drabber, often quite brown, non-breeding plumage. So they look different this year at this time of year. And at least for me, these kind of non-showy, more drabber plumages can be harder to distinguish from each other. So it's kind of a whole new ball game if you've been birding in the summer to try to get your hands on the winter plumages. The other thing that happens in the winter is that whereas in the summer, a lot of male birds are singing really beautiful, fancy, complex songs that are quite, not easy, but easier to learn how to identify by ear. In the winter, when they're not breeding, when they're not holding territories, they're not singing those kind of identifiable songs anymore. And both the males and females are mostly just singing what we call calls, which are shorter, simpler vocalizations. So there are a lot of birds that have really similar, short, simple vocalizations, and it can be a little tricky to learn how to distinguish those calls from each other. So that's what we'll be working on tonight. And in general, in the winter and at all times of year, knowing what kind of habitat you're in is a crucial, super important tip for trying to identify what birds you're looking at. So as we go through, I'll tell you what habitat we're supposed to be kind of pretending that we're in, so I hope that'll help you a bit. And if you're working on learning how to identify species of birds, another useful kind of first step is to try to just narrow it down to a family or a wider group of birds. So they're a little bit organized in that way too. So the way this is going to work tonight, I have prepared kind of a quiz for Bert and Todd, our birdwalk guides. And they're going to be talking through how they're identifying each of the species. So I hope that'll help you learn how to identify the species yourself. All of the birds in this quiz have been seen here at the Clifton Institute sometime between October and March in the last several years. So they belong here right now. Like I said, they're organized mostly by habitat. I threw a few in just because they were similar looking, but I'll tell you what habitat we're in. And in each habitat, I'll start with pictures and then move on to sounds. And just so you know, Bert has been kept in the dark about all of these, so there's no cheating. And if you'd like, I'd love for you to play along, so you can jump into the chat if you want to make a guess about what we're looking at, or if you have any questions at any point, please let me know. I just want to make sure there's no one else waiting. I'm now struggling to see how to do that. Bert, do you know how to get the manage participants window back?
Maybe you have to hit escape.
Oh, here we go. Sorry. Yep, there was someone waiting. Okay, great. So I'll keep an eye on that as well. Okay, any questions, or otherwise we'll get right to it. So we're going to start off on the ponds. We have 2 big ponds here, and they're often the start of our bird walks. So the first bird of the night, here it is, bird number 1.
Is it a race, or how do we tag in? American black duck.
And so, but you want people also to guess on the chat, right? No.
Well, maybe for the trickier ones.
Yeah, I wasn't sure. Sorry.
No, that's great.
So is that a pure black duck, or is it a hybrid, though, I wonder?
So it looks okay. I'm not seeing any green sheen in the head. I don't know if the photograph was actually taken in winter. But I don't see a curly tail feather. The blue speculum looks okay, but yeah, it's always a fair question in Virginia, especially in summer.
But and a mallard would have a yellower bill, a bird with more mallard in it.
Yeah, I would think so. And I admittedly I don't trust my screen to see how greenish that bill, how dusky that bill is. So you may have a better look at that. Like if I tilt my screen one way or the other, that bill changes color. So.
Okay, well, you guys got it. American black duck. Bird number 2.
Ooh, yeah. Is that a Wigeon?
It is not.
It's a Gadwall.
I'm thinking teal.
What is it?
I'm thinking green-winged teal.
What do you guys see that are making you think one or the other?
Wow.
The head shape doesn't look right so much for Gadwall. The forehead looks a little wrong. The overall, it's very hard to tell the size on a single.
Yeah.
Wow.
Someone else weighed in that they think it's a green-winged teal. There you go.
Yeah, and I'm not. And then exactly as Kurt just said, that white stripe of the tail puts it on green-winged teal for me.
I think it's a Gadwall.
It might be.
What do you think?
According to the internet?
According to the internet.
It may be.
Wow, yeah. I mean, it's pretty weird looking for a green wing to me, but I mean. So does the female Gadwall have a white speculum like the male Gadwall?
I'm not sure. The other thing I will say is I just due to the zoom, I lose that bill a little bit. I don't know if that's if it's just cut off. I'm not sure if that's something on my end or not because
yeah, maybe you can drag it a little bit to the left.
Yeah, it's not too much. Yeah, that's better. Oh yeah.
Female Gadwall does have a white speculum. Yeah. Well.
Okay.
All right. Good. That's a good one. Okay.
Let's see. Okay.
I'll admit right off the bat, I'm terrible at photos.
That's a mallard.
And I guess if you're a beginner birder, that's a lesson too, that it's really valuable to be able to see the size of the bird, which is really hard to do in a photograph.
And size is a terrible deceiver. For experienced birders and inexperienced birders, size is very, very tricky. And I say it all the time on my walks that, size is tricky.
Oh, Bert, sorry. But on the last bird, someone asked what the speculum is. So maybe I can go back to that.
Well, you can't see it in that picture. Why don't you go back to the mallard?
Right.
I mean, it's the blue wing patch. But why do they call it the speculum anyway?
I don't know the answer to that.
Yeah, it is. So different birds have different colors, but that's the place on the body to look where this blue patch is
And only ducks have speculums, as far as I mean, I haven't heard any other birds. Yeah.
Yeah, I've only ever heard it referred to with ducks, and I don't know where it comes from.
All right, here's bird number 3.
Mallard.
Oh, mallard. Yeah.
Okay, easy. Because
The violet indigo speculum is bordered by white, which you won't see on a black duck. The bird itself isn't so deep brown chocolate. The bill's got more orange to it, so this is a type mallard. Just that how we get to mallard versus all the other ducks is just this sort of brownish bird puts us in that mallard black duck realm. There are, their hen ducks can all be brown, but the orange legs, the orangish bill gets us to mallard, and then that alone, that blue with the white border certainly helps for me.
okay, here's the next one.
That's a Wigeon.
That's a Wigeon.
Great.
Okay. Well, look at the head shape of that thing compared to the Gadwall, putative Gadwall.
Great.
And that's a redhead. That's one that we get at Clifton.
Not a lot of, but we do. Yeah.
Another thing is the diving ducks versus the dabbling ducks. So if you see a duck sticking its butt up in the air, that's what we call a dabbling duck. But that's all the ones we've seen so far are dabbling ducks. But this is a diving duck, so it dives down to get plant and animal matter, I think.
And all the redhead's in a family of ducks with ringnecks, Scaup, redhead, and canvasbacks. Canvasbacks are very different on bill shape, but when you talk about ring-necked Scaup, how do you separate the brown ducks and female types? That white there is something that's sort of hard to articulate about redheads that make them, like Bert just jumped on it as redhead, and I think it's got to do with that white behind the eye, but there's just a very precise head shape to redheads that is different from the others and makes that redhead.
Okay.
And there we're talking about that bill difference, that these female canvasbacks, that slope, basically it's almost a straight line from the tip of the bill to the crown. There's not a lot of indentation in forehead. It's just almost a straight slope, and canvasbacks are unique for freshwater inland ducks. The scoters have it, but the scoters and eider have it on the ocean, but for these guys, you see that head shape, it's unique, and then that big white flank and white back, put that at canvasback.
Again, everyone, if you ever have any questions about anything Bert or Todd is saying, please jump into the chat and we'll chat about any of it. Okay, next bird.
Oh, I can't even see the tail.
That's the whole thing.
Anyway, yeah.
But yeah, that stripe on the face, that compact bird gets us at Ruddy Duck.
And the bill is almost cartoonish. I mean,
It really is.
Okay.
So,
Go
you
on.
want the bird or do you want me to do it?
Yeah, so that's a Scaup, but which one is a little hard to say. I mean, it has kind of a pointy head, which, it looks like a pretty square head. Looks like maybe Lester Scaup.
Yeah, that notch, that little bump towards the back of the head, the highest point of the head sort of behind the eye, and just that little notch you see, it's subtle, but it's there. That is a great field mark for lesser Scaup. Greater Scaups have sort of a bulbousy forehead, and so you'd see sort of the highest point is forward of the eye typically, especially when you're dealing with female and either immature males or sort of summer males, which we don't get around here, but it gets a little trickier. But that little notch in the head screams lesser Scaup.
But now, what about the eye versus the crown? So Kurt says in the chat, eye too far from crown for greater Scaup. Is that what you're saying, Todd? Is that the same?
I think what I'm saying is that, yeah, usually on a greater Scaup, the bulbousy forehead, the highest part of the head tends to be between the eye and the bill, or maybe directly above the eye. And then the highest peak of the head tends to be well behind the eye on lesser Scaups. And again, that notch, you don't see that notch on it's a notch, but just that little drop off there on a greater Scaup. This doesn't have a bulbousy forehead.
Bird 9.
And that's a ringneck.
One of our more common inland Piedmont ducks here, but yeah.
It's looking kind of undignified in this photo.
Yeah, she's got some slime hanging off the bill. That's a nice hen ringneck duck.
It ought to be called the ring-billed duck.
Although the males do have it. Having some lunch for later, I like it.
So just to review, I'll try to move this down. I'm going to put this recording online somewhere at some point. So if you want to come back and study, like Bert said, there's kind of two divisions of ducks, the dabblers that we saw first, and the top row is the females, and the bottom row is the males, and then species by species. And then we saw some diving ducks, and the ruddy duck didn't fit on there, but the male, if in the right time of year, is unmistakable.
Oh, gorgeous, gorgeous bird.
Great.
So what do you guys have for ratios of greater to lesser scaup in the records?
Lesser is by far the more common bird.
Inland.
Inland, yeah. I don't know. I don't have good statistics, at least handy, about the numbers. But in terms of just sort of like how I've set up the eBird filters, like greater scaup will flag. It'll prompt you for details, whereas lesser scaup is the expected one. So we do get graders, but I would say it's somewhere in the 30 to 50 to 1 sort of ratio, maybe closer to 30, but I feel like we'll have a couple dozen. If you get a big body of water, you'll have a couple dozen lesser scaup on it sometimes, not commonly, and then you might have 1 or 2 graders hanging around. That seems to be, at least for Fauquier and the northern Piedmont, that seems to be the norm.
And then when you get down in the salt water in the bay, farther south end, you see the
graders start to dominate. Yeah, and I mean lessers. It's one of the best challenges in birding is scaup ID. So part of it is that you're not often looking at birds that are very close together. Close to you, and they're much easier when they are together when you get a mixed flock. But when you're looking at just a single species at a distance, it's hard. But yeah, greater scaups tend to be more salt oriented, although that's not a great indicator. But it's certainly for us lesser. Northern Piedmont and Virginia lesser is the expected scaup. Greater is the good bird.
There was a question. Someone asked, are there other ducks with the ring on the beak like the ring-necked?
Nothing pops into mind.
That's pretty distinctive.
It is, especially in the male. The male, you can really see it. I can't think of one that's got anything quite like that. Nothing pops into mind.
But maybe the tip of the lesser scaups bill might be deceptive at a distance.
Yeah, and also you have the same tip. There's a little bit. It looks like a pale area tip on the hen redhead as well. But ringneck, it really is defined. As Bert said, they should be. There's a good argument for them to be named ring-billed duck. So
great.
And as far as changes in duck numbers at Clifton, I have not noticed anything. Todd or Tom might be able to answer that.
One of the classic questions we've asked for a long time is to look at the ratio in your ringneck populations and notice the ratio of males to females. And there's a tremendous skewing that happens here, and I often pose that question to students as to why is that? Why are there a roughly 10 to 1 ratio of males to females when they arrive here in November and early December? And so that's an interesting question to throw out there. We can let people mull on it a little bit.
Okay, now let's hear it as well.
Let's see if I hope this sound works.
Did I just hear a hooded merganser?
I
One of
think
my
so.
favorite calls. I was not expecting duck. I thought we were going to do other vocalizations, but
Yeah.
I just heard the of hooded merganser. I love it.
Did it go pop?
I didn't hear the pop as much as I heard the growl, but yeah.
Okay, I'll start this over just so everybody gets it.
Yeah.
It is.
Yep.
I don't hear that as often in Fauquier as I do, like if I get coastal in winter. I feel like the hooded mergs get a little bit more frisky. I do sometimes hear them when there's a lot around here, but I think of that as such a Cape Charles Eastern Shore kind of winter thing, that pop, and I love it.
I know that's not one of the trickier vocalizations, but I love
Oh,
it.
and yeah, you're gonna lose me on duck vocalizations. I'm terrible with them.
Okay, so that does it for the ponds, and we're gonna switch now. We're in a field.
Like it.
We're gonna start with the sparrows.
Ah, my favorite, one of my favorites.
So that's a fox sparrow. Yep.
And this bird,
Rufus.
for
Go
people,
ahead.
bird feeders, one of the things I say to them, and it's kind of silly, but it's like throw a used Christmas tree if you've got the space for it, if you've got the yard for it. Throw a used Christmas tree, under your bird feeders or near your bird feeders, and even a little bit of snow, there'll be a fox sparrow sitting, kind of like looking at the seed that's on the ground. They're just a glorious, wonderful, beautiful bird.
So on the fox sparrow, yeah, very rufous with some yellow in the bill and some gray on the head.
Yeah, and that rufous is so rich. We don't really have, the only sparrow that kind of comes close in richness is swamp sparrow, but there are plenty, they're much grayer, but that rufous with that gray is just, and these are big, a really big plump sparrow. They're bigger than all of our sparrows in terms of how they look when you see them. They're just very plump.
And they're often alone.
Yeah, they really are. They can be. Yep. And they have a very different from all of our sparrows. And you'll hear them in February. Even a warm January day, you might hear something that, if you know bird vocalizations, you might hear something that sounds very Oriole-like. And it's a fox sparrow singing. They have a very plaintive whistled song. That's and as they head out in March, early March. On mild days, you might hear fox sparrows singing.
Brandon asks, what does the fox sparrow want the Christmas tree for?
I don't know. I don't know. I think Christmas trees offer a lot of cover, and so it's a nice kind of dense cover that they can sort of retreat to. They're a real scratcher. They want to be on the ground scratching. They're not going to take off too far, and they're not going to land on the feeder, so they want to be on the ground, and they want something that they can retreat to that's sort of dense and they can just disappear in. And a fox sparrow in a dense Christmas tree, you're just not going to see it. So it's probably just cover. But I throw a Christmas tree out. Now I have all these skeletons of Christmas trees and various forms of decay under my feeders, and I only get them when it snows. It's an interesting thing. But yeah, once you get even a couple inches of snow, sure enough, there'll be a fox sparrow scratching around under my feeders.
I've had the exact same experience, Todd. Under my old Christmas trees that I gather up after Christmas and throw around under my feeders, and the fox sparrows are there. So they're sort of like a towhee, right? So they're down there on the ground scratching, and they're huge birds and can attract attention. So they like to have that shelter close by so that the Cooper's hawk doesn't get them.
Okay, next bird. Oh no.
Todd's muted. I don't know, but this is a song sparrow, so this is the default sparrow to learn. And once you learn this one, then you can differentiate from all the others. And pretty heavy streaks with a black spot on the breast. Pretty good sized sparrow, thick bill.
And there's a key streak that Eleanor, if you kind of go to that widest streak, so the base of the bill, if you can put the cursor there. A little lower, that moustachial streak is
The mailer, yeah.
Yeah, that mailer streak is, we really don't like. So the other streaky-breasted birds we have, Savannah Sparrow and Lincoln Sparrow. On song sparrow, that's so distinct. It's so wide. In this bird, it's actually kind of thin, and then even those upper breast streaks are much thicker on song sparrows. And as Bert said, this is sort of the default sparrow. Get to know this sparrow and get to know it well, and sort of the nuance of this guy. They have a longer tail than some of our others. And then some of those other streaky breasted birds like Savannah and Lincolns become much easier to identify when you can just confidently look at a song sparrow and say, well, that's a song sparrow.
And they frequently vocalize, so that's a good correlation.
Swamp. So this is a swamp sparrow. The habitat is helpful with these if you're in a damp place. Nice rufous wings and not much in terms of streaks on the breast. A Lincoln's is similar. It's going to have fine streaks on the breast, otherwise look a fair amount like a swamp. And the swamp also has a pretty gray face.
Yeah, these guys are a nice combination of deeper rust and darker gray. And they're variable. Sometimes you'll see these swamp sparrows where their breasts are just a more battleship gray at times down to this sort of warmer brown. They're a lovely sparrow, and at the mitigation area at Clifton, they're always around in winter, and yeah, they're a beautiful sparrow.
Next bird.
Nice one.
Yeah,
So Lincoln's.
one of my favorites.
And so you just saw one of these on the birdwalk on Wednesday.
Yeah, we had a few of them. And this,
That's awesome.
I don't know if it's a picture or if it's my mother, but this guy is sort of lacking a little bit of that. A lot of times so you're looking at that fine streaking of the upper breast, and that very different from that song sparrow, which had this thicker streaking. You've got this finer streaking on the upper breast, and also they are usually a little warmer. This bird's got it, from the eye to the throat. It's got some of those warmer hues, but often that warmer brown washes across the breast too, and you just get these sort of super warm birds. The word I used multiple times 2 days ago when I had the bird walk and I was trying to get people on the bird is they just have this delicateness to them. The bird itself, not structurally, but there's something about its markings that just make it look delicate to me versus the song sparrow, which is a little bit cruder, a little bit bolder.
Can you go back to the song, Eleanor, please?
Yeah. And as I was reading about these birds putting this together, I think the Lincoln's was described as neat. It was just a very tidy.
It is. It really is. It's a good description. Yeah, much thicker, bolder spots, especially that malar area. Just a little bit more blunt, a little bit more crude versus that delicate, neat, tidy Lincolns. And Lincolns are wonderful because you have this little sort of narrow window in fall where they come through, and we do get them in spring, but I don't seem to run into them as often in spring as I do in fall. And so I used to think of these as the first cold front in October would bring the Lincolns. That's now sort of shifted to the middle of the month because my first Lincolns for the year were just on Wednesday. And yeah, but they really are my favorite sparrow, and I get pretty jazzed when I'm around them.
I was looking at our banding records, and this is one that I'm expecting to see come in, and curious if they're going to get later with climate change.
It already feels like it to me. I used to think they were like October 4th, and now they feel like October 15th. But that's anecdotal, but that's just how it seems. Another streaky-breasted bird, lacking that real thick malar area like the song sparrow, but that yellow between the eye and the bill is unique for streaky-breasted birds. And this guy wants to be out in the open.
This area. Can you see my cursor? Is that?
Yeah.
Okay.
So it's a Savannah.
And this is Savannah. The other thing, this is sort of getting a little bit advanced, but the Savannahs are short-tailed and they have really short primaries. So where the wing is right there, that you just don't see a lot of primaries sticking out past the secondaries in these guys. But if you see that yellow between the eye and the bill on a streaky-breasted bird and you're out in open country, you're looking at the Savannah sparrow.
And this one, you can't really see the breast streaks, but they often have really fine streaks on the breast. And yeah, I mean, if you like wide open spaces, so even if the grass is 2 inches or 3 inches tall, you can have Savannahs, and they make a really high pitched little single seat note
You know, a little, I've always spelled it in my head, TSIP, a little, and it is, it's real high pitched. Oh, this one tricked me for a second. The bird that actually this region may be losing, this is American tree sparrow, and that yellow and black bill is unique, those rusty tones, those big bold wing bars. But unfortunately, this bird used to be regular in Fauquier County in winter. There was no shortage of places where you could go and see this guy. And now I don't even know if I saw one last winter. And now I feel like you could go 2 or 3 winters and not luck into one. It used to be you could find 15 or 20. There's a more distinct giveaway on these guys. If you see them breast on, they have a central dark spot on the breast that is pretty much unique to these guys. And they're a little bit bigger. They look a lot, superficially, they look a lot like field sparrow because they have the same sort of rusty coloration. But that yellow and black bill, that central breast marking, those wing bars, and that sort of brown, dark, white pattern on the back make them stand out. But I'm worried that this bird is just doesn't need to come south anymore. So I don't know how it's doing from a population standpoint globally, but as far as finding it in Virginia in winter, those days are harder.
So, and this is the field sparrow. So this is the toned down version of the tree sparrow. And it has an orange bill, or a pink bill. And these are breeders here, and they're declining across North America. So of our breeding birds, this one is one of the ones that's not doing well at all. And I wonder, if the tree sparrow, if it is declining across the continent, if it might be some of the same things. I don't know. What's the breeding habitat of the tree sparrow? I've never been up there.
I don't know either. I've never been where they breed. I would imagine it's similar to this guy, but I don't know. One of the nice things about field sparrow for me is they have a wonderful song. It's just this kind of dead of summer. They'll sing it. It's this sort of descending, dropping ping pong ball kind of thing. But I know this is a winter program, but I still can't look at a field sparrow without thinking about hearing one.
And this is certainly one of the species that's a strength for our field station that's been able to maintain the local populations pretty well because of the habitat.
Next bird.
Yeah, go ahead, Todd. You can lead off. You're the Fauquier bird guy.
So this guy is this is an interesting bird. We have these guys in numbers. This is white crowned sparrow, similar to white-throated sparrow, but they're in the same genus. But they're different in a lot of ways. This is a big sparrow, bigger than field sparrow, bigger than most of our sparrows. It's a big, bulky sparrow, and this is one that I've always noted that the people who live in more populated areas to our east, like Fairfax and Prince William counties, will come out to Fauquier to get this bird. This is a hard bird in east of us, but out here, these birds really like hedgerows. They really like multiflora rose, which isn't a great plant, but they like it. It's not an easy bird at Clifton. There's a little patch in the Adams pasture over by the building there where these guys hang around. But so the proper Clifton grounds has been one that hung around at a feeder for years in a row. But yeah, they're clear-breasted. They've got this bold pattern of black and white on their head. They have if this was a little bit more in profile, I've always said that they have sort of a drill instructor hat on their head, like Louis Gossett Jr. in whatever that movie was that I've forgotten. But they've got this kind of tilted head forward sort of look that just shape-wise, they're plump. They've got this sort of high-peaked head. Great. They sing weekly. They'll sing all winter, more so than most other sparrows. These guys just put a little sun on them. Even in a 30-degree day, they'll belt out some weak notes of their song. but then they're gone. And come May, they're gone. They go further west. They're not so much north. A lot of our birds go north. These guys go north and west. And yeah, they're one of my favorites. I really do like them. And that's the more common. This guy will be under your bird feeders. This guy is at any little thick wood edge where there's some understory or even just a thicket. This is white-throated sparrow, and you can see its name. They get it from that big white throat. This one, like the Savannah sparrow, has yellow between the eyes and the bill, but this is a clean-breasted bird, and this is not a bird that you're going to find of a wide open area. You'll find it on the edge of a wide open area, but you're not going to find it 100 yards from that edge. And these guys will be in big numbers. There could be 20, 30, 50 of them all in a big thicket. And this is the default winter sparrow. This and junco are really the default winter sparrow. They'll also start singing, but they usually wait a little bit until at least March. And yeah, these guys will be under your feeders if they have the right habitat. Real common sparrow. Wonderful bird though.
Yeah, I didn't want to confuse anyone. This probably doesn't belong in the field habitat properly, but I wanted to put it with the sparrows. But yeah, you won't.
Oh, fair enough,
yeah. Okay, that's the introduction to sparrows, and I think hopefully these will be a little trickier for you guys.
Oh yeah.
Ooh. Wow.
Have at it, Bert.
I hope, and I like you guys are the experts, so if you say the internet is wrong, I'll believe you.
I'm not saying anyone's wrong yet, but
Somebody says swamp. I mean, I would say song, but I mean, Henslow's has not been seen at Clifton.
I would say this is. I would go with like a young song sparrow here as well. I just hard to say this.
Definitely hatchier. Yeah.
Yeah.
That is a green face, man. Okay, song.
Song sparrow. So what were you guys looking at that made you think song?
That facial pattern. I like Tom said, this is a young bird, so it's messy. It doesn't look right. So the feathers are ruffled. This is just a great quiz bird. But for me,
has a spot a little bit.
Yeah, something about the overall general impression and just that facial pattern
It's got the gape. So the gape, you can see at the base of the bill, there's a little bit of skin, it looks like. That's from when it was a baby bird, when it was in the nest. Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, this is white crown. Yeah, that's more like it.
Yeah, baby white crowns. These are birds hatched the same year. They don't have that super distinct black and white cap. These guys can fool people for a lot of things. These actually get mixed up with house sparrows, which aren't really sparrows at all. But yeah, again. But this picture is very good for sort of showing that plumpness. They're a big ball of a sparrow, and you can kind of see that sloped, peaked head, that drill instructor hat that I was sort of talking about.
Todd, and what about Gambles? Is that like the lower color and where?
Yeah, so on adults, I don't know that it means anything on young, but
okay.
Versus a dark lord bird, yep. It's to do with which subspecies.
So Gambles is not a body part, it's a subspecies.
Yep, it's a subspecies.
Okay.
So I'd call that another song.
Yeah.
Again, yep, and there's a white throat.
Sorry, you want to go back to that one?
No, I mean, it's the same thing. It's just sort of these thicker, blobbier streaks on the breast and around the face, and that sort of brown and white pattern. Just pretty classic song sparrow.
And you got this one as white-throated.
And so wait, can you go back?
Yeah. Yeah.
So is this a tan?
I would go with tan-lined, even though it's a little hard to say. I think it's tan-lined. So that line above the eye, some of them is tan and some of them it's white as a sheet of paper. And so they're two different forms of the bird, or two different schemes of the bird. But apparently there's a metric, and I only learned this recently, and I don't know it. But ones breed with, there's something about what happens when they breed together. I don't know what it is. They can all breed together. Tans and whites can breed together, but there's some sort of metric of what happens when which ones breed with which.
We should look into that. That's, yeah, cool.
I lost my place.
Whoa.
Looks like a winter chipping sparrow.
It's so weird. The perspective is so weird because it looks huge. It looks like a lark sparrow, you know, just from.
Yeah, it looks a little like a white crown too, but there's, you know, too much dark lines, but I'd go with winter chipping.
Wow.
Yeah. Oh, did I introduce chipping sparrow? I might have done things a little out of order.
No, I think we missed that, but that's all
All
right.
right, we'll get a better picture of a chipping sparrow in a minute.
Yeah, but this is a winter chipping. Normally a chipping sparrow, when you see them in summer, they'll have a very rusty, all those crown feathers that are sort of brown with a little white and some black flecks in there. There'll be a much more brick red on a breeding plumage chipping sparrow. This is what they look like right now, and this is what we're seeing a lot of. As they're either leaving or coming through on their way south, we're seeing these sort of winter plumage chipping sparrows.
We'll get a better
And
picture.
a clay colored would have a paler, a more white mailer, or.
Yeah, and would be brassier overall, just sort of a warmer, kind of brassy golden hue around the head. The black eye stripe is indicative, especially between the bill and the eye. So clay colored will have it, but I think clay colored is pale lowered. Between the eye and the bill, I think is on a clay colored.
So Eleanor, can you point to the lore and to the mailer for people? Yeah.
So
that, I think on a clay colored, that's not as black, or maybe not black at all. But clay colored, like that, they have just a brassier bird overall in winter. But yeah, I think that area is pale.
a couple more sparrows.
Ooh, wow.
Feels a little like a Savannah.
Yeah, I reckon.
Yeah, I've seen yellow lures in pretty short primaries.
Okay.
That's what makes that kind of quizzy is I'm a sort of total cheater as a birder in that I consider habitat, date, and where I am so heavily that it really alters my opinion of a bird. This bird feels like maybe it's in a little bit more of a brushy area, which savannas will be in, of course. But if this bird was hanging on a big blade of tall grass in a field, I would have questioned it. But on something like that with leaves, sort of like, yeah, it's probably a savanna, but yeah, it's savanna. There's a swamp sparrow that's pretty bleached out. They're not usually that white-breasted, and that may be an overexposure of the photo, but oftentimes, like we saw one earlier that was a lot more buffy through there, and I was saying that sometimes they're almost battleship gray. That gray and bold brown pattern around the face, I just love this bird.
Okay, you guys ready for some calls?
Right.
Yeah, this is where Bert's taking over.
Oh my God. A European robin? I don't know. I can barely hear it.
Okay.
Find that again. I know what it's not, but I probably, personally, I would need another clue, like where am I standing?
Pretty low quality
We're
recording.
still in the fields, and I'm staying in the sparrow family.
And you're staying in winter?
Yes, these are all winter field birds.
That could be Savannah, just a much closer microphone than normally what I hear, but it's not song. Oh, you know what interesting.
Ooh, nice. They do make some funny calls. They make some really unusual calls. Yeah. Song, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
So I'll play a little more.
They're not coming. Yeah, it's not coming through real clear.
Yep, the chimp.
Can you turn it up any more?
Yes, okay.
Oh, cool.
It'll be louder in a second. Yep, so that was the song sparrow. Do you want to say any more about that? The classic, that's the classic call.
To me, it's just a chimp. Like, as Kurt had said, it's a chimp. It's this little chimp call that it's a little lower, a little fuller than a lot of others. It doesn't have a sort of a thinness to it. It's a little thicker, a little richer.
That's an important one to learn.
Yeah.
It is.
Okay, here's another. Let's see. I hope I will.
That's Savannah, right? That must be a Savannah.
It sounded like grasshopper to me, which I don't think she'd put in here. So yeah, Savannah.
You guys are
That open country call. The open country.
Yeah, again, the habitat clue is important.
and you're in time of year.
Yeah.
Right, exactly. Yeah. So these open these open habitat birds have these higher, thinner calls than these sort of birds that are in foliage. So then, even though I know you didn't have grasshopper and it had that quality to it, that thin open country quality to it.
Okay, let's see. I'll do a couple more sounds.
Yeah. White throat. That must be a white-throated sparrow, right? No. No.
Wouldn't have been terribly surprised by swamp sparrow on that.
Oh my God! Play it again. Play it again.
Yeah.
Jeez.
Sorry, I jumped the gun.
Yeah.
It's a little less of a hiss. It's a little bit more abrupt.
And again, like I think I'm just so biased because it depends on where I am.
I agree. It's the cheat. We all cheat on it.
Man.
I know where I'm standing when I hear it.
Yeah, this is hard. You guys are doing great.
It's fun though. I like getting humbled. So.
Okay, last song for the moment, or last call rather.
I don't have a clue. Field
Yeah,
sparrow?
no. Pretty tinny recording. I'm blaming it on the recording.
I think, let's see. Oh, okay, it's not.
Oh, tree sparrow.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So
They have a tinkly sort of call, right? I mean, some of their
a tinkly sort of call. I agree, and it's so far from my brain now that I just don't think about them because they're just so. I've kind of pushed them all aside because it's like just don't see them anymore.
Okay, we're gonna switch to the forest. Let's see. We're taking a little longer than I was expecting, so I'll try to skip a few, but here we go. So that's the classic.
Yeah, we got that one.
White-throated. In the habitat where it belongs. Here we go.
Oh.
So that's a summer chipping sparrow. That rusty cap is, we won't see much of that until March now, but yeah, that's a pretty classic chipping sparrow.
Okay, yeah, we got a tree sparrow on the left and a chipping on the right.
I would look at it as well.
What's the difference? What are you looking at?
Yeah, well, the yellow, the boulder wing bars on the tree sparrow.
The line through the eye is rusty on a tree and black on a chipping.
Yeah.
It just, but yeah, it's more reddish overall. It's more like a redhead overall, like a redheaded human overall. The tree sparrows versus the chipping. Not a sparrow at all. House sparrow.
Not exactly a forest bird, but you know.
Yeah.
No, I did pond, field, forest. I put it somewhere. Yeah.
House sparrow. This is a female. I mean, a female house sparrow out of context is a crippling bird for many birders. You get one where it happens to me all the time. I'll be somewhere where I'll be like, what am I looking at? And then you kind of figure it out. You're like, oh, well, you're in a weird place. You know, you're supposed to be next to the Wawa. You're not supposed to be in the middle of a field somewhere, but they can be.
I don't know if you actually want to identify these.
Ooh, I love it.
Cool.
Wow, cool.
And I don't have the I mean, I guess I know some of them, but I don't have the answers for all of these. So that's you guys.
I'm just worried. The second from the left is the one that I'm.
I think that's swamp, but everybody else, to me, that's field, swamp, song, fox.
Fox, white throat.
Yeah. I think that's song. Number 2 is song. I think. I don't know.
Yeah, I agree. Swamp, you mean?
Yeah, I think, yeah, sorry. Field, song, field, swamp, song, fox, white throat.
Yeah. That's actually really nice to have them next to each other. That's a little more realistic.
Yeah.
Actually, it does give you an idea of the size. You get a little bit, you're skewed a little bit by the forward, how the hands of the white throat in the song, number 3 and 5, are a little bit forward of the fox. But even so, the fox still looks bigger, and the fox is bigger. And that's even a little bit behind in the frame. So, yeah.
Is that right?
Yes.
That's how I see it, yep.
All right, that's a butterbuck.
Warbler.
Yep.
Yeah, Myrtle Warbler, or Yellow-rumped Warbler, which our form here in the East is Myrtle. Just a drab bird that's got a warbler bill, so it's thinner. It doesn't have to crush up seed. It just eats berries and bugs. It's got that sort of beigey throat. That's just a classic Yellow-rumped Warbler.
And the broken eye-ring.
Yeah, broken eye-ring crescents.
Do you see a bunch this last week? They're starting to show up. Big
They
bunch.
are in
Yeah.
droves.
Okay, the next one, that was a nice photo.
It was. It's
Nice.
our wonderful purple finch. This is a brown one, which could be female or could be young male. They're another bird that we're going to see around this winter, which is nice after having none last winter. Check your feeders. They're different from house finches in that big bold white eye line that you're looking at. And then that other one below the eye. And then those streaks are just richer, thicker. A house sparrow is grayer overall. Those and those breasts are more thinly streaked. And we had a couple on our walk. Like, there you go. So that's female house sparrow. You can see she doesn't have that big. House finch. She doesn't have that big bold eye line, and her breast streaking is thinner, and versus the bold, thicker purple finch. And yeah, we had a couple purple finches on Wednesday's walk, and they've been dribbling in, not quite as much as another finch called pine Siskin, which is here in numbers, but Siskin. Well done, Eleanor. So those yellow edges to those feathers on the wing, that folded wing, is just so indicative, and it's just a very streaky bird. And that bill, that tiny pointy little bill, is just classic pine Siskin. And this is a winter right now, or a fall and winter, that is shaping up to be kind of legendary with these guys. I had a friend sent me a photo of he has about a 2 foot by 2 foot platform feeder, and it had over 100 of them just wedged in there eating his seed today. It's and we had many hundreds of these guys flying around Clifton on Wednesday morning. They're here, and they're coming in big numbers this winter.
And can you go back to the house? We'll just look at the bill of the pine Siskin, and then if you look at the bill of the poofy, yeah, but the house finch is kind of intermediate. Purple finch has this gigantic bill.
Yeah.
And then if you go back to the house finch, it's kind of in the middle, and the top, the upper mandible is a bit curved on the house finch as well.
And then that pointy little sharp thing of the Siskin.
Yeah.
Purple finch and pine Siskin showed up on feeders here in big numbers this week.
Yeah.
Together.
Same thing. Another pine Siskin.
The winter denizen. This is Ruby Crown Kinglet. Sort of the absence of field marks kind of make this guy, that eye makes him look big-eyed. And I sort of jokingly, when I'm out with people, say big-eyed kinglet. Those big, bold wing bars, sort of the breast can be anything from beige to almost yellow. The back can be sort of that dullish gray, green to kind of a richer olive. But these are very small birds, and they don't sit still. They're constantly flitting. They're constantly moving around. They're in your holly trees or any dense thicket. If you just do a little pitching, that little noise, they pop right out. But they are, and this is a funny bird that will show up on your windows sometimes. If you live in the woods or if you have bugs sort of in your windows, they'll be hover gleaning, where they're trying to get sort of dead spider webs in the middle of winter.
They also fight with their own
You
image.
see it hovering, you know it's.
But yeah, big time.
I put together an exhibitor quiz, but I think maybe I'll save that for Bert afterwards.
Well, you don't want to do a couple of those hawks?
Yeah, sure.
And I know it's about time, but
Coopers.
so that one has not been to the chiropractor. We were just in Cape May, so we were working on these, but you can see the leading edge is not perfectly straight. And also the tail is pretty square. And
I'd go ahead with the secondary bulge, that bulge on the trailing edge of the wing. Yep, right in there, that's the secondary bulge. The only thing that makes this bird sort of intermediate to me is it's got a pretty good sized head for a sharp-shinned, but I think this is just a big female sharp-shinned.
wow.
That's a Cooper's hawk. You've got these teardrop markings on it, and one of the things you can see in the tail is, even though it looks squared off, you can sort of see those tail feathers are much shorter. You can see where some of them end, and that means it's got graduated tail feathers, whereas a sharp-shinned has almost all same length tail feathers. But this guy, it's hard to see. Like, you don't know whether or not, if you don't know what you're looking at, you don't know whether it's just part of the coloration of the tail feather or it's the end of the tail feather. But this is very much the end of the tail feather with these shorter feathers and that extend longer. But yeah, it's got, so this bird is sort of either mid-flap or it's gliding on a wind. That this isn't your classic sort of soaring Cooper's hawk, because it shows a little secondary bulge. It does not show a straight leading edge, but it is so much head forward of that leading edge, and those more teardropped streaks on the upper breast of an immature Cooper's.
And just to back up for maybe more beginning birders, so these two species of hawk are two most common in the accipiter genus, and I think it's fair to say even for pretty experienced birders, this is kind of the challenge.
Yeah, it's one of the hardest ID challenges, so much so that even among really experienced hawk watchers, they have something called shoopers, which is just a sharp-shinned Cooper's thing. And yeah, so these are accipiters. They're characterized by shorter wings, longer tails. These guys eat birds. They primarily are designed to chase other birds. So they're designed for navigation through heavy canopy and forest to go pursuing birds that dive into the trees. They're not perch hunters. They want to catch everybody on the wing. They won't. I suspect they eat, especially Coopers, will probably eat a fair amount of mammals. Sharp-shinned probably fewer. But these guys are, they're going to go after other birds. And so they migrate when lots and lots of other birds are migrating, so they can just grab a Myrtle warbler if they want for lunch someday, and that's their thing. But yeah, they're structurally, they're very different. That's a long tail and a short wing.
In the mornings, listen for them being mobbed by blue jays. Oftentimes you'll hear a group of blue jays early in migration, and there'll be a hawk will emerge.
Let's do one more.
That's got to be a Sharpie.
That real straight tail. That eye looks very close to the front of the head. So, yeah, I agree. Sharp-shinned hawk. These guys, again, eat a lot of birds.
And with the hawks, females are bigger than males. So that's, if you have a male sharp-shinned, it's pretty easy to tell from a female Cooper's, but the intermediate ones are part of the problem.
Okay, and the last thing is sounds in the forest. So here's one.
That's one to learn for sure.
Yeah, you don't have to go into the forest to get it. It'll be in your yard. If that's Carolina wren, that's the sort of ubiquitous calling bird that just this repeated, they say tea kettle, or video, and it just, learn that one. It'll help you out.
Jeez.
A little dry.
That could be lots of different things. It could be a kinglet. It could be a ruby crown. It could be a house wren. I don't know.
Yeah, I'm not sure on that one either. House wren, a winter wren. Oh,
That
interesting. It's an interesting winter wren scold, I guess. It's not the note that I typically. I mean, the winter wren song is an incredibly complex bubbling thing, and then their chip note in winter is this sort of double little tip 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 tip.
Yeah.
That that's a winter wren call note. Right.
okay. Let's see. Here's another one.
Red belly.
I would say downy.
Yeah, it's just an interesting quality to the recording.
Yeah.
That's a downy. Well, says
Okay.
Zeno Canto. So this is my birding nemesis. So that versus
Yeah, much flatter.
Beak.
Yeah. Look at that beak too. So that's a great image for, that's a really seems almost exaggerated version. One of the things that I tell everybody on Downy versus Hairy, this is a great image for it on Hairy, is if you draw a line right where the beak meets the head, that line from where the beak meets the head to the tip of the beak, and from where the beak meets the head to the back of the head, if they're about equal like they are on this bird, you're looking at a hairy woodpecker, a downy, the beak is about half the width of the head. And the birds themselves, again, size is a big deceiver when it comes to the size of a bird. But a hairy woodpecker is a much bigger bird than a downy woodpecker. But that proportions of the bill to the head that one's a great illustration of that feature. It's on you, Bert.
Yeah, I'm only hearing the first part of it now. I'm not hearing the second part of the recording at all.
okay. Sorry, that's my fault then. That was a
Oh, okay.
the high ones maybe are not coming through so well. So let's see.
There you go.
There you go, bone.
I was still only hearing the first half, but yeah, that's a white-throated sparrow. Oh, Canada, 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 or oh, Sam Peabody, Peabody, Peabody.
Yep.
Depending on your country.
Let me see if I can trick you with just one or two more.
Whoa, man, gonna give me a heart attack.
Well, I don't know. Here, listen again.
Is it not an evening grosbeak? Well,
Wait, listen one more. Listen.
I mean, it's a weird recording. It's coming through completely garbled. Like I'm not. It sounds. Yeah.
Okay.
Oh,
Yeah.
no,
Well, it's almost
I
time.
was nowhere near that.
Okay. I'll play a few more of these. How about after I say goodbye, and then they'll be on the recording if you'd like to practice. I'll just throw up a few more resources and then we can call it a night. If you want to learn more, you should come for a bird walk with either Bert or Todd, and you can get their expertise in person. Todd leads our bird walks on second Wednesdays, and Bert leads them on fourth Saturdays. I don't get to go as much as I would like to, but whenever I do, it is such a treat to go out with either of them. I always learn a lot. Let's see, we like Sibley Birds as our favorite field guide. The Sibley Birds app is also our favorite. As you can tell from both Bert and Todd, they rely a lot on knowing where they are to figure out what they're looking at. So eBird is a good way to do that. That can tell you in advance or while you're out there what you can be expecting where you are. And it takes practice. Like Bert said, we were just at Cape May, so we got to see lots and lots and lots of birds all at once, and that was great practice for us. Any tips you guys want to give as
Someone just asked a question about Merlin, and I think Merlin's great. It's got two features. One is sort of a 20 questions. It will ask you where you saw the bird, what it looked like, shaped like, size, and I think it's very good. And it's also very good at photo ID. It's not perfect, but it's very good. And I'm good friends with a lot of the people who develop Merlin and work at the lab at Cornell and eBird and stuff, and they are constantly blown away by the artificial intelligence that powers Merlin into how it does it. And in fact, they don't even know sometimes how it knows what a bird is, but it's spooky good sometimes, and then it can be critically inaccurate, but it is absolutely definitely a good resource and a good way to go. Both features, whether it's the 20 questions sort of approach where it just keeps asking you questions and tries to narrow it down, or if you upload a photo, it's very good. Not perfect, but very good.
all right, Bert, any last thoughts, tips, advice?
Another thing you can do is make recordings. I mean, now you can make pretty good recordings with your iPhone, and you can upload those to iNaturalist and get help with identifications, which is great because really a lot of birding is by ear. So, yeah.
All true. I agree.
Awesome. Well, Bert and I at least will stick around for a minute if anyone has any more questions. Thank you, Todd. I hope everyone, will come and
Thank you guys for putting it together. I loved it.
for us. Thank you. Thank you, everybody, for coming.
Thanks, everybody.
Eleanor, where'd you pull your calls from today?
All the calls are from Zeno Canto.
Okay.
This is where I got photos.
Yeah. Okay. Did you have your, by chance, I've been doing a lot of work with sound sharing. Did you click the little button in the bottom when you did your sharing? Do you know where that sound sharing is
I think
on
so.
Zoom? So when you do your share screen, if you click on share screen before you pick,
And it was like turn on original sound. Yeah.
there's a little in the bottom left. There's this little click that you click on. I didn't know if you had that on or not. 'Cause
Some of the sounds come through, right?
sometimes that can be helpful.
It's just a high thing. Or no? Okay.
Unfortunately not.
Okay. Okay. Oh yeah. Brandon also has a question. Any perennial recommendations for winter birds?
Oh. I mean, one thing I've observed is purple top, edge, so native grasses as being really good sources for seeds for birds in the winter. But I don't have any ideas. Janet Davis might be a good person to ask.
Some of the trees with berries that sort of don't ripen or don't get edible until later in the year. I mean, hollies don't usually get picked on until seems like January around here. Maybe some of the same with some of the dogwoods. But yeah, if it's got a berry, I feel like spice bush goes pretty early. But yeah, I'm just like thinking of Bruce Jones's place and what he's got out there. And
purple coneflower is very popular with goldfinches, and so is mullein. You don't really plant mullein, but if you've got it, don't cut it down.
Right.
Bayberry is a great one now.
Black oil sunflower seed
Black oil sun.
on a piece of wood that's horizontal.
And Douglas also has a question about a sandpiper.
Well, probably a spotted sandpiper
Spotted.
or a solitary sandpiper.
Yeah. It's really the only sort of, I mean, you could get yellow legs this time of year, but spotted sandpiper or yellow legs are the pond edge birds for right now. At least here.
Great.
Right on.
Okay.
Cool. Thanks a lot, everybody.
Thank you.
You guys, thanks.
Good job, guys.
See you soon.